So really excited to be a part of this event, and really, I think we've come a long way. I just wanted to acknowledge women in architecture globally. You've done so much, and it's really great to see this that this is even on. So really thrilled to be part of it. Now today I'm going to be talking to you about elastic personalisation, and this is all around meeting intermediaries where they are on their digital journey. But first, I wanted to talk to you about my learning journey. So there's a lot of bubbles on the page, and I don't need to go through each and every one of these, but I just wanted to paint a picture just for if there are any aspiring architects on the call, just to give an honest representation of the things that I've uh, worked towards learning. So on the outside, I've got the knowledge and skills set. So there's a lot of things you'd expect to see there. And I have come from a BI and business intelligence, business analysis background. Before that, I was a management accountant, and I didn't spark joy in my life. Then I moved into Lean Six Sigma projects as well. So I've done a lot of different things in between. And the most recent course I did was with Women in Technology here in Brisbane, and I did their board readiness course. And I just wanted to talk briefly about the inner circle on this slide. So not only is it really important to learn all of those technical skills and the things that help you do your day-to-day job for the title that you have, I feel like at where I'm at in my career, it was really time to start giving back. So I actively help build the community, working with other greats that I think people like Daryl and Christine have already paved the way with, others like Wendy, and too many to name on this call, on this presentation. Actively mentoring, and I feel like that's one of the catalysts for creating community. So being available when people reach out. Sometimes it's difficult with your day-to-day job, but at least if you're not the right person to mentor, as Joanne was saying, and Christine, to be able to get them the right help that they need as well. It takes an army. It's a whole community type of thing to be a mentor. Doing things like today, speaking at events, being brave and putting yourself out there, I think is a big part of being a successful architect. So sharing back with being really open and transparent with how you approach things, so we can uplift the whole set of architecture disciplines, and also board and leadership roles. I've been actively moving into more of those roles, and for the last it's been the last two odd years I haven't had architect in my title, and I've been enjoying architecture a lot more. So I think that's a whole thing I'd love to study unto itself. So I'm going to shift gear now, and we're going to talk a little bit about the industry dynamics. So this is in the financial services industry, and the case study I'm going to talk about is for intermediated business. So I've had a lot of different clients in the last couple of years across the insurance industry, and there's a real common theme about the things that we're seeing with a lot of different organisations. So increasing customer demands, this is across the board for, it's not just spanning the insurance industry, but the customer expectations are ever changing. There's a lot of extra product flexibility, particularly in different methods of buying insurance, and different ways of for people to have embedded insurance, things like that. So it's not always a conscious choice to buy as a standalone product. So you need flexibility to be able to work with a lot of different partners, and also the price. So anyone who's everywhere around the world, we've got different economic pressures that we're experiencing, maybe a little bit differently in each different regional area, that it's very prevalent. So that means that the prices for the supply chain to get things rectified are going up as well. So it's confusing for customers. How do you price? How do you explain when you have a renewal that the price to replace an asset has gone up? So are a lot of people actually actively underinsured? The prices of everything are going up. So even understanding those price points is complex in this whole industry. And there's a lot more frequent frequency with weather events. This is, yeah, globally we're seeing this. So different perils that we experience, that increases risk and around reinsurance. There are also cyber risks, and again, this lends itself across the board with the different industries. Also, with things like claims management, there's a real challenge that you experience between balancing out the cost to serve for a claim payout versus how much it would cost to be able to service that, and how you protect yourself against fraud in those instances. I've already touched on the supply chain costs and constraints. I think through COVID that was quite evident, and it impacted different industries in very different significant ways. And we're still seeing some of those trends with increased costs and availability of different materials. Product proliferation, I could speak on that one just on its own for a whole hour. Um, a lot of the different products that companies have, because we're trying to be so flexible now. There's a tipping point where you've got too many different products, and I mean products as in customer facing products, but also the technology products. So the landscape is increasingly complex, and we've got a lot of different technology vendors and platforms, a lot of software as a service platforms that have a lot of similar or same or slightly similar different capabilities, and some of those are overlapping. So it's quite sometimes it's would you use AI in this platform or this platform for this particular use case, and you have to make some trade-offs, but there's a lot more platforms, and the decommissioning is expensive and not as exciting. So, and it doesn't always have to be expensive, but moving on to different platforms where you've got a lot of extra capability, sometimes you might end up increasing your costs to be able to get off that older platform. So that, and all people in the industry are going to be facing these same challenges. So to switch gear now from the industry and really narrow in on intermediaries. So a lot of intermediaries, depending on which type of insurances they sell, they've got different levels of digital maturity. So depending for different industries that for different parts of commercial, there are lot more relationship. So it's not going with a lot less digital touch points. It's not going to be something that you automate. So self-service in heavily relationship built industries aren't ever going to be self-service. They're not high transaction type type turnover. So they've got very different levels depending on what they are and who they are and what they do, and who their end customers are and what the risk types are. So there's no one size to fit all segments for intermediaries and their end customers. So still across the industry, there's a lot of PDF and email-based ways of working, and a lot of that's to do with legal record keeping across different legislative requirements, regulatory requirements. So there's a lot of opportunity in the operations space within insurance. And bot solutions aren't always, they're very valuable and they mimic human behavior, but if the structured data doesn't exist, it's more complex to train models. So we're seeing the introduction more of machine learning to be able to use AI across those. So yeah, really having a blend of structured and unstructured and non-standard data makes it a harder starting point, not one that you can't overcome, but it's we've got different types of documents and images that aren't into a set format. It takes a while longer for the models to learn, so they've got different training ramp up and payback periods. And volume and scale. So depending on how many of these you do, if they're really complex transactions, but you don't do many of them, it doesn't lend itself. That's going back to my first point, makes it more challenging to implement different solutions. So I'm going to use a specific case study for one of my previous clients. So the challenge, we started with putting our heads together as a design team. How might we create unlimited processing capacity for intermediaries and their customers? So we're looking at unconstraining the capacity so we can grow. So then the people in the organisation would only work on high value and complex work to achieve scalable growth. So, scalable growth was the main outcome with unlimited processing capability, a capacity to be able to achieve that. And I just want to touch on I've worked at another financial services organization, a client some years ago now. They did so well at growth that they had growing pains at the end of it. They'd gone so hard on the growth strategy that they hadn't automated a lot of their back end processes quickly enough, and that introduced a whole new set of challenges. So even understanding if we hit our growth targets or if we exceeded them or got halfway, so with scenario planning, what would that do to our service model? And really understanding that, how does that, what pressure does it put on the front line, and can we actually grow to the level that we aspire to? So I'll talk through where we started. So we formed a cross-functional design team, and we had different people. So we looked at the end-to-end value chain and the capabilities within each, and really unpacked each of those, and looked at. We had representation not just from the leadership, but people working in each of those teams and having an appreciation of what was happening up and downstream within each of those processes. And we set a challenge to be able to say, hey, what would this look like if we could start over? How would we do a clean skin version of this? And we had strong executive support. So I think uh, part of the success of this particular engagement was very much hinged on having that relentless executive support. So incredible encouragement to challenge and permission. So I think a lot of this was around psychological safety, which I'll talk about in a moment. But having permission to challenge the that's not how we do things around here is key to a lot of these. I'm sure everyone listening will be in the same boat. Without that, it's very hard. You can come up with the best solutions, but unless you've got executive support to change things and rapidly test and learn, it makes it a lot more problematic. So we had a strong support. So we identified and validated the different use cases. So when you've got permission to, if you've got proof points and you can proceed, go for it. If your hypotheses that we created back when we did the review didn't line up and we had proof points to that didn't quite we didn't have the successes that we thought we would, we had permission to move on from there, so we didn't have to just deliver it anyway. And even having support to do that is incredibly important. So that strong leadership support to drop something just as much as it is important to pursue something. So I think that was really critical part of this particular change. So progress over perfection. Sort of one of my colleagues said had needed to bring that up in nearly every meeting to keep us on track. But having that psychological safety to support that. So without, I've worked at a lot of other different organisations where it's dependent on the team and the appetite for risk, and how the funding is working. But that psychological safety to support isn't always there. And I just wanted to share a quick story about just a previous job I worked at. I worked at a global firm who was really big on Lean Six Sigma, and you were able to openly challenge one another if you had the data to prove what you were saying. So it was actually encouraged and rewarded, and that's something that I haven't really seen since. And I unfortunately, that was one of my first jobs while I was still studying at university. And I thought that everywhere was like that. And I was, it was a bit of a reality check to realize that not everywhere is. And I quickly learned though that wasn't appropriate in every organization. So how you raise those, you're not always going to have that psychological safety, because you can't create all of you can't necessarily create all of the conditions. So it's a matter of understanding who are your advocates, who wants this change, and how do you do that more change management piece to meet one on one and understand what people's different motivations are and what their aspirations are and where they're getting blocked. Because if you're able to get that advocacy and first follower and get that support ahead of going into different meetings, that that's probably the best thing I've learned from a brilliant change manager that I worked with years ago. And it's nothing to do with explicitly to do with architecture, but it's one of the most valuable architecture lessons I personally have learned in the last 5 years. Back to the use case, this case study. So once we'd taken all of these ideas and we had some proof points, it was really a matter of understanding. So these are the different options that we've got to solve for, but we need to really understand our customers and where they're at, because we can build the best solution, but if they're not going to use it, so back to what Christine was saying in the previous presentation, if they're not going to use it and they don't want it, then why are we building it? So we really needed to dig deep and understand more about how are we going to slice and dice the intermediated customers in their segments. So that led to more of, yeah, I didn't call it a digital journey or digital maturity, but at each different organisation that you interact with through your supply chain, through your book of customers, and all of your partners, they're all on their own digital evolution. And just something that I learnt. So and I'll just talk you through the different stages that had been identified. So the first being manual, so manual processing, where you've got human augmented, so where you're using staff on and offshore staff, so leveraging partners as well as different different mechanisms to be able to optimize that. Moving through to augmented, so that's really mimicking human behavior and augmenting a human process. So, but you're mimicking rather than removing so you're removing the human for the process, but it's still acting as though it were a human. The next one along, it's structured. So this is using more straight through processing type of capabilities. So if you've got really great interface and structured data, or if you receive data in a structured way, it's easier to manipulate and load and wash against business rules. So something that is really exciting is being able to take business logic out of code, reverse engineer it into business rules, and then be able to have a business user update that. So I've worked with some really great people that are doing that day in, day out. It's a tireless role, but it's so valuable in transformation. And then moving on to the connected customer, so being able to connect with APIs, having systems talk to one another in a secure or having secure logins for them to be able to load data into, all the way through to intelligence, so using artificial intelligence, machine learning to look at different, understanding different text, voice and graphic content to be able to have models learn for you. So these are all great, but I quickly discovered I don't think each customer neatly fits into one of these boxes. So I had to go back to basics a little bit. So just some learnings to share. Rather than segment each of these into the one box, just in the row below, we looked across the value chain. So we went back to we went back to the value chain and the work that we did in that space, and we really understood if you disconnect the front end and back end, what reusable modules can you use for this use case, and how do you form? So we formed different patterns that we could reuse that were flexible enough to decouple. So how we capture information, because if you're using the same back end, then you're able to have all different sorts of interfaces, and So you're able to meet customers and intermediaries where they are to help them in that moment when they need you. And it's not one size fits all. It's completely driven by the process or the task or the service that the intermediary or customer is trying to consume. So being able to reuse those patterns and going in with that, I've I've worked at a lot of different places that have had the architecture principles, but going in designing for modularity from day one and being able to have like Lego blocks. I've seen it on the slides. I've read the principles, but I haven't worked many places where we've actually got to do it and have that flexibility to say we're going to use this part from here and this part from here, and that's going to work for this particular client. So having that a la carte menu of different options is really exciting to be a part of and see how that's evolved and building incrementally. So architecting for scale, then starting really small and low risk. So that's really key in success in this space. So that's how it went and how it's going. So the biggest thing, particularly for intermediated businesses, and I'm not sure how this. I'd love to hear from anyone in the questions to be able in the chat to be able to talk about this, but. The readiness of the intermediary is key. They're not all on the same journey. They don't care about your digital transformation either necessarily. So really need to understand what they care about and where they're at with their journey and what do their customers care about, what challenges are they facing in their specific set of the market. So without that, you're going to get nowhere. So I keep coming back to this. I'm quickly finding out that the business architecture role is so connected to change management at an enterprise level and the customer advocacy space as well. So I just feel like that's a natural cluster of a real powerhouse of capability together. So I am really interested to keep watching how those spaces evolve and move forward together in partnership. So yeah, working really closely with relationship managers. They know the clients better than anyone. So you need to work, be in step together, and have a comms plan of how you're going to talk to the intermediary, understanding what their timelines are, big projects are they doing? Are they already doing something that you could, if we just shifted this little bit here, maybe we could work in with what they're doing, have that flexibility, build for that flexibility. And with different intermediaries partnering, so it's not just collaborating and we'll have a think about it together. It's go in with a partnership model where where you're sharing the outcomes. So it's a win-win. Without that, it's very hard to get some traction. So we share in the experiment, and we sit and listen. We don't. It's not a one-way push of capability. It's really value creation together with a shared view of it. Identifying architecture patterns so that reuse to scale rapidly, that's key. And again, I've seen the words, I've heard the pitch so many times, but it's always been interesting to see how it actually translates into action. But yeah, really really exciting to see when it's working really well. And running fast safely, understanding clear guardrails. So with principles are good, but guardrails in action are even better. So really having a tight understanding and an agreed and endorsed understanding across business and technology about how you collaborate and how you prioritize and how you measure benefits and understanding that and making it all really clear. That's really critical. And I think I certainly I'm looking forward to evolving my thinking around that and helping other organisations with understanding that as well. Yeah, I think that's the running fast safely is key, especially working in with people from risk. So uh, that's that's really key. So that was all I had to share on the case study for today, but I just wanted to talk a little bit more about Women in Architecture Australia. So I am just really thrilled that that this organisation exists and that we've been able to grow this because we're in a different time zone. So it's been really lovely to be able to embrace with global WEA to be able to have a little pitch over in Australia and grow the local community where we can connect in person. It's a lot harder because we're a lot further away, but just really thankful that everyone has built this community that we can be part of, and we're really looking to grow this further locally. So if you want, to everyone on the call, if you know someone that has that curious mindset, is really hypothesis driven, understands systems thinking, has confidence to raise things if they see things that don't align, or are happy to unpack a problem. Yeah, if you know people like that have got that kind of skill set and mindset, please advocate for them. And with advocating, I'm not just talking about introducing them to a community. Help them write their CV, help them introduce them to one of the hiring managers, offer to be their referee. Yeah, advocacy is that next step beyond support. So it's great when someone sponsors someone, as in they help them upskill and mentors, but advocating is where we really want to be. And I'm just really grateful to be able to share and chat with you today. So I'll just take a pause there, Daryl, and then do we want to take some questions and have a discussion?
Great, thank you, Heidi. Appreciate it. Yeah, really interesting, and sort of mind's going all over the place in terms of where to go with the conversation. There's so much information being shared, and I've got to say the whole event, it's just crazy how many amazing people we've had on the agenda and the work they're doing in organisations.
No,
Amazing.
incredible. And I can see the personalisation and matching people where they are. I don't think I'm talking about anything new necessarily, but uh, the just having that flexibility by design is just something that I've been really impressed with some of the people I've worked with in the last couple of years, being able to embrace that and having an open mindset. So it's not this one fixed way and we're going to push everyone down this one fixed way. It's like, look, why don't we just understand where other people are and then meet them there? So I think that there's a lot of value in that, a lot of power, and it's not necessarily an expensive thing to deliver different solutions that are fit for purpose for different use cases and match people where they are, or just build this one solution that's going to do every use case. Sometimes it's not necessarily the right way to go. So I've just been really happy to be part of that kind of work.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of comments came in. One was, learning fast is key too. Yeah, so the ability to learn fast and then be able to make decisions and change and stop things when you need to. And it's good to hear that there's organisations out there that understand them.
Yeah, most definitely. And the rapid introduction of AI has been really interesting time to be working in this space as well. Certainly for personally, just been really taking a keen eye on how different companies are responding. So I'm an
Myself the
independent
other day.
contractor. And
Yeah,
I've just been keeping an open mind with how different people are responding to it across different industries as well. So I keep a curious eye on it.
yeah. I found myself the other day asking somebody whether or not their organisation had any prompt engineers. And
That came up. Yeah, that
I
came up
wouldn't
yesterday
have
for
thought
me.
I'd be asking that. Yeah. There you go. So it is starting to be something that you see.
And well, if you look at the different changes for the technology as well, I've worked with a few different low code data science platforms, and I haven't been on the tools, but been part of different decision engines and other tools for RFPs, so understanding their high-level requirements. And it's interesting because what the data science space has changed quite significantly. So what people used to need to have been able to being a statistician, and probably more than that, there's different types of data science, but being able to understand how to predict when a customer is going to churn. Well, there's a lot of there's less reliance on needing to write code for some of those things now. So with large language models coming through, so yeah, really exciting to see how those language models are being used, which use cases they're being used for, and it's evolving the skill sets for other types of work that a lot of our colleagues would do alongside enterprise architecture. So yeah, it's really interesting to see what value that unlocks. And I think in the enterprise architecture space, I think that prompt engineer should be the next bubble on my on my slide, asking better questions and not necessarily being a prompt engineer, but understanding how to work in with them and having a good awareness of it. I think that's something that is definitely an asset for a lot of architects.
Yeah. We'll get back to the main topic at hand, but I see Christine's popped a question into the chat window, related, I think, to WIA and what we're doing with Australia here. It says, what would you tell your 16-year-old self about being an EA?
Oh, goodness. Do more public speaking earlier so that you have got it out of the way earlier in your career. Do more speaking. I actively encourage a lot of people in my network to pick up the mantle and speak at these events as well. I think being able to speak in confidently in presenting and in meeting rooms to boards as well, I think that goes a long way with being able to articulate where you're aiming for when you're presenting these, because a lot of the times with enterprise architecture, you're going to be asking for these sets of initiatives to be formed up. So you're working in with people and you're designing what the enterprise will look like, and then there's an investment component attached. So understanding how to speak to a CFO, speak to as many different people in the organization as you can and understand what they do. There was a lady that I spoke to, it was one of the women's networking events, one of my first jobs, and I asked her, what would you recommend that I do? And she said, it doesn't matter what role you're in, but try and understand how what you do fits into the bigger organization, and read their corporate reports and their strategy, and understand what you do and the direct link that you have to that. So that's probably, I would have just heard that a few years earlier, I think.
And as that 16-year-old being given some advice, do you think you would have listened?
Definitely.
I
wanted to do
admit,
accounting back then, Daryl. So yeah, probably, probably not.
Yeah, I just reflecting on my own journey while you were talking about that, and recognizing that I am introverted and I have a great fear of public speaking, and yet I find myself standing in front of rooms full of people all the time. And I think I've run something like 100 events over the last decade or so, and it is something you can get better at, but it doesn't necessarily make the butterflies in the stomach go away. You just sort of get more familiar with seeing yourself in that position.
No, most definitely. You hide it very well, Daryl.
Yes, it's all facade. Yeah, it's interesting. I just thinking. Oh no, we'll get back to the other topic, but just thinking about a conference that I helped organise back in, I'm going to say 2021, and I gave the event managers a list of female architects to to talk to about getting them on the agenda, and they completely failed. There were none on the agenda, and there was only one female attendee in the room. So it was a complete failure from that perspective. And sort of talks to how long this conversation's been going on that I've been having around WEIR and trying to improve the situation. But I never got feedback on what happened when they contacted those women to get them to speak. Was it they were busy? They didn't feel like they had anything to say? They had a fear of public speaking? What are those things that might contribute to not being able to build an agenda? And yet, by comparison, we have today where WEIR has taken over built, and we've got 22 hours of sessions, and it's just incredible. And the work that the women are doing all over the world is amazing. So I guess we are moving in the right direction.
And how long ago was that event, just out of curiosity?
I'm pretty sure, because I've run several events with this company, they get a bit blurred in my memory, but I'm pretty sure it was either 2019 or it was 2021. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
It's come a long way.
Yeah, that's not that long ago, really, and so it's great to see the contrast. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I was reflecting while Christine was presenting, and I thought, what else makes for a great architect? And I think a lot of it's experience as well. So I think you need a good dose of both. So another really great quality is being able to jump in the deep end somewhere and learn. So a lot of contractors who are just you get in and get the job done and do something different each time, you know, in the same sphere but slightly different. They're perfect for being part of those roles, because that you have to come in and understand the power dynamics of how things get done. You need to understand how things get funded, how they get delivered. Then you need to understand all of the business and the customers and the stakeholders. So being able to understand that quickly, I think, and being able to do that over and over to see what good and what bad looks like. I think that is. I don't even. I don't want to just call it experience, but that flexibility of being able to adapt to your environment and understand the the laws of gravity at each different place. I think that is a skill, and I don't know what to call it. And I just want to reflect back to when I was working at a travel company through COVID, and I've presented about this before, but I saw a real strength in a lot of my colleagues that they were just adaptable. There was a higher purpose to what we were doing. There were people that needed to get home. They were stranded abroad. The borders were shutting, and people were panicking and choked a lot of the channels with a lot of these inquiries, you know, and other people, they might have been traveling in 3 years' time. I mean, then we've got the ticking time bomb of when the flights are actually leaving, and then you've got when you can actually get them home. Can they get on a flight at all? So changing the travel. So I think that everyone just got in and did the work because it was about the customers and the situation, and there was something higher than the individual, and everyone, it was just really, it was a really hard time for across the world for a lot of different reasons, but it was such an amazing piece of work, and there was a real strength in the people that just got in and helped out. There was a lot of moving parts, and it was quite an emotional time for a lot of people because um, yeah, it was a, we won't talk about too much, but yeah, it was just really great to see that quality of adaptability and resilience and flexibility. But I think that that's definitely part of being an architect, because sometimes you work on things and then the direction changes and you're like, oh, I'm not going to do that anymore. So you've nearly got to be more committed to the outcomes of the getting the outcomes for the enterprise and the bit for the business, the operational metrics of the business at times, rather than the piece of work itself. So that tension across how you show up to do the work and not being attached to the outcome is a good skill to build on.
Yeah, I used the phrase earlier in one of the other sessions about having strong convictions loosely held, which just
Mm.
sort of speaks to that mindset of thinking about it, knowing what to do, but also being able to change your mind when different situations present themselves. Which actually takes me back to the main topic of your presentation and the fact that
Mm.
you were talking about the support that you had from management around learning and experimentation. Tell us a little bit more about what that was like, how it was set up so that people knew that they were able to learn, have learning experiences, but not necessarily finish any given thing.
Uh, so having, if you work with people that have come from startup worlds, it's a different mindset, and a lot of that's quite confronting for the funding models for large corporates, particularly in financial services in heavily regulated and risk adverse industries. So just having an acceptance to be able to test and learn, but take the learnings and improve. So you still need to deliver value, but how you do it, you've got a bit more flexibility. I've just found over the probably more earlier in my career before there were such great capabilities in modeling tools and analysis and making sure that the portfolio was yeah, well understood through architecture. So understanding the split across capabilities and things. So way back when I started a long time ago, um, there was a lot of gut feel and, oh, I reckon this will be good. And so even just having a culture where if you see it a different way, you can write it as a hypothesis and test it, like prove it. So that whole culture is certainly, that's not just something that happens overnight as well, but you can start small. But yeah, should we just write that down, even just using the language? I've got this hypothesis that this is correct. It's not it's not gospel because I thought it. So yeah, having the discipline to test what you're saying. So those proof points don't necessarily need to be a prototype or a thing. Even just proving the hypotheses and holding each other to account in a respectful way. That's definitely something that's confronting for some people, but it's having a respectful disagreement about the work. That's a skill as well unto itself. So, and using data to prove out things.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to uh, you know past experiences where organisations have wanted to do something, and one of the easy ways of making sure that it never happened was to force somebody to sign the bottom line on a business case saying that they were going to achieve these outcomes, and they'd just back away. And it sort of is very contrasting in mentality, the old business case, justify everything and you're getting fired if it doesn't work, to the sort of mindset that you were talking about. I think it's good that we're moving in that direction, but certainly, as you say, it doesn't fit in with standard budgeting and planning cycles, does it?
No, that could be a whole built that could be a whole
It certainly,
conference to itself.
it
Yeah,
certainly could.
I think there's different methods of, yeah, I think that there's a lot of companies that are leading the charge in changing how they fund things. It's really exciting to see more of a value focus and autonomy with guardrails, that whole thinking. So yeah, I've been really impressed with seeing how some companies are working through that and enhancing that.
Yeah, yeah. You were showing those columns with the different headings on different aspects of the type of work that needs to be done, and I was wondering to myself, is there a maturity model type approach that would help organisations where they could rate themselves against those capabilities?
Yeah, there are a lot of really good ones already established for digital maturity that look at the enterprise. We took more of a use case. So these are our pain points. What are we going to do to solve for that one? And does that one have to look like this one? And how many of those do we do? And so understanding the use case and the problems and looking up and downstream. And then why do we have a handover there? So even understanding the operating model and changing the operating model and the technology fitting around that, um, even having those kinds of um, thinking through that upstream in a more deliberate way. So um, yeah, I think there's a lot of there are great models out there, but this was solving for a more granular operational um, set of set of use cases.
And given that it tended to be reliant on data, was there any place for the traditional sort of data management style conversations?
Yeah, and we work in this engagement works really closely with different operational process consultants, different business architects, enterprise architects, subject matter experts, and really understood with the data science capability as well. How else could we look at solving for this? So we've got lots of different options available, and we made sure we looked through each of those different lenses and then made sure that they all came together again. I don't think I answered your question.
Interesting. Yeah, no, it's interesting. So, was there a clearly defined sense of ownership of the data, either the source data or whatever data might be transformed into something else?
Yeah, so each of the operational owners had owned their specific metrics. And
Mm,
yeah, there are
mm,
a lot of different ways to measure the same thing as well. So we made sure we're looking through as many different lenses as we could. So it's not binary of there's this many or it takes this long. What do the customers feel about it? What are the verbatims? What are they? It's really powerful to read verbatims when we're looking at these different things because it's and being able to so you can't just do the architecture and go here you go. I feel like it's an evolution of the working and you are just continually refining it. So just augmenting the volumes and cycle times with understanding that just reading through what customers actually think about it and what's the dropout rate, understanding how much does that thing cost to run. Yeah, all of those, and look at all of that together. So, yeah, there's a lot of power in looking through a lot of different lenses over the same space, and it's
mm.
an easier way to engage different people to lean in to solve problems where they're multifaceted, which most are.
Yeah, yeah. And was there sentiment analysis done using some machine learning models or something similar?
I think we for this particular one we'd used just the NPS and the verbatims.
The verbatims, yeah. And the verbatims were processed from a sentiment analysis perspective?
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 makes sense. And what about the boring question, Heidi? What about regulations? Is there anything that would interfere with that work and from a point of view of the use of the data, the storage of the
Mm.
data, the privacy considerations?
I'm going to say something odd, and other people, when I've mentioned it, don't. It's not always a popular thing to say, but when you've got constraints and limited time and budget, it's not a blue sky opportunity. It's a red. I think of it as a red problem, the red ocean. You've got a constrained set. Let's talk about those constraints up front, and then see what we can solve for. Because if you go down the path of opening up, what if we had no constraints? And like, well, we do. So let's deal with those up front. So it's not a double diamond where you're starting at the start and going wide. If we've got fixed constraints that are immovable, let's include them into the problem statement. So yeah, it really understanding those before you. So that's just part of the analysis. And I know that we solve problems for through different ways. So that's not always popular to talk about those up front, but um, yeah, I think you need to be flexible and adaptable to take a different approach when there are immovable things that are outside of regulatory requirements. Yeah, you need to know about them as part of your framing the problem.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
guess we often as architects get sort of tagged as the people, the gloomy people that talk about all the constraints that you have to work under. But I
uh,
still think it's better than
you
getting fined afterwards.
well, you raise a really good point. It's not always popular giving bad news, but uh, so that's something that I think the community, just taking it back to the WEA community, I think that that's something that I've certainly got a lot of value out of, and in other community groups as well, is to be able to connect, because sometimes it's hard and does feel lonely when you're giving, you're saying no, or you're giving bad news, or you're helping articulate an impact assessment to say why something's would work, but where it's not going to work. So it's against the grain. um, People like to say yes and like to be liked, but sometimes it's not a popular role. So yeah, it is part of the job, and it's a hard part of the job. So it's it's good to be agreeable, but you're there to uphold certain standards and principles. So how you show up to be able to do that is so critical, and I think that's where people can really helping people understand how to tread that path, and in those meetings and in the moment have those conversations without feeling like you're giving bad news, like you own the news. So even understanding how to phrase those things, so that I'm here to help, and here's where just navigating those conversations and being able to take the lead without owning the bad news, because it's there's a lot of legacy organizations out there that have a lot of complexity baked in, so you can't do everything, and
Yeah,
sometimes you're not going to be able to say yes to everyone, and the ideas that they are looking to pursue. So yeah, helping
yeah,
people.
and
Yeah. So
yeah, yeah.
anyone involved in mentoring, please help people. That's probably, if I were to say something to my 16-year-old self, it would be ask how to have those conversations. Back to Christine's point, because they
Yeah,
can be difficult, and I think helping understand how to have those conversations in a positive way are so critical.
yeah. I'm reminded of my friends in the cybersecurity world who have a phrase that there's too people get told people in the industry get told there's too much cybersecurity until there's not enough. You just want to avoid that situation, so as best you
Yes.
can. And of course, you didn't create the regulations either. But I suppose it goes back to your point about the idea that principles are good. And I suppose if the principles include some sort of legislative compliance and then you build guardrails that reflect the intent of those principles, you still have that autonomy with guardrails. So that makes
Yeah, I
sense.
think empowered teams, doing everything you can to empower the teams is certainly lends itself to a more successful outcome. As long as you've got, no one wants to get micromanaged. I don't know anyone that enjoys it. So having those clear boundaries of what to do and why up front, and here's where the boundaries of that are. Being clear, if you're clear with the boundaries, people can respect them and run quicker because they're talked about and they're documented. So I think I've been involved in different engagements where those haven't been explicit, and it takes a lot longer because everyone turns up thinking they're doing the right thing. So you don't want to slow people down, but you want to make sure that everyone knows where those regulatory constraints are.
Yeah. And because we've only got a couple of minutes left, I'm going to ask you a hard question. Hype. What do you do with hype? How do you cut through the hype?
Oh, on which thing? I use a practical use case. So if we're talking about, I'm assuming you're going to talk about different technology capabilities. Let's talk about
Yes.
something that is keeping us up at night as a business. What thing do you care about? Let's work it through. Let's unpack it and say, how do we solve for that? So pick something really small but niggly and go, this is how this would work, and understanding you can't just plug something in and it magically works. What's the complexity? What's the state of the data in this system, and is that already integrated into this system? Just asking lots of questions about what what building blocks you need for that to be successful, and where you can reuse that. So if we did work that through, this is, this is the journey that would take longer term. But yeah, just helping people with information on a practical use case is my go-to. It wasn't a hard
Yeah.
question.
No, that's right. No, it was very good. It's a very good answer. And I suppose the idea of experimentation sort of supports that approach. It's a little bit of the old proof of concept, working on a business scenario, proving the point, either it works or it doesn't, and then everybody learns from the process.
I think I've just been blessed with working with some really great people in technology, automation, data science that you can sit and learn with and understand and say, oh, would that work for this? And how would we reuse this? And, is this even possible? And have really practical, pragmatic conversations. Yeah, so I think I've just been really lucky.
Yeah, yeah. So have I. I don't know. Just yeah. Although there's the old saying, the harder you work, the luckier you get. Perhaps it's a little bit of
Yes.
that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Look, Heidi, thank you. Thank you so much. You're in the previous session as well as this one, and you've shared a bunch of information with us today. We really appreciate it. And of course, we love the story about We Are Australia as well. So looking forward to more activity in that space.
Yeah, happy to
Any last
support it.
thoughts before we say goodbye?
No, just yeah, keep following us on the socials for We're Australia. We'll be putting on some events in the coming months, and we're really excited. And just thank you for putting this on.